Welcome to week one of our 7-week virtual bootcamp for change makers, where you're going to learn the fundamentals of marketing for busy entrepreneurs. As all of you know, I'm the founder of Synduit. I am Jared Yellen, and it is my honor to guide you over these next 7 weeks. Now, some of you might be thinking to yourself, why are we doing this? Why is Synduit a software solution for your business, a marketing system, a business growth system? Why are we so motivated to also share skills that you have the ability to learn and then implement in order to make a bigger impact? So here's the reality. As much as we're a software solution, as much as we're a marketing system, as much as many of you would consider Synduit a utility in your business, what we really are is an experience. We're an experience that's looking to create a massive impact in the world. All of you know our mission. It's to unite 1 million changemaker entrepreneurs so that together we can help create freedom for 1 billion people from around the world. And we know we're not going to accomplish that feat simply because we've created a great software solution. There also is going to need to be an army, a tribe, a movement of people just like you who have the skill set that's required to create freedom. And what you're going to learn over the next 7 weeks with me are 7 fundamentals that I'm not talking theory here, things that I have done, things that my team has done, and things that our top 1% of our clients have done in order to create change. This is not going to think apart. There's going to be a ton of thought that goes into this. Some of it is introspective, other is extremely tactical. But the outcome, if you're truly serious about making an impact, is that your business will grow and your impact will be more significant. And through this process, there are going to be things that I share that are going to sound contrarian. Maybe things that you've tried in the past, they just didn't work for you. Maybe things that make you somewhat uncomfortable. And here's my request. My request for you is this. It's actually really simple. If you want it badly enough, there will be no excuses. You will commit to the process. You will either show up live every week or at least make the time to watch the recording, and then you will execute on what you learn. Because I am not doing this to make you feel good. That's not my motivation. My motivation is to make you be good. I want you to be the best version of yourself so that you have the ability to show up in your life and in your business as the person who can deliver change. I'm sick and tired of not our tribe, but just in general, entrepreneurs who are talking about change, but not actually doing change. People that are theorizing about what they plan to do, but not actually executing. What makes our tribe different is we execute. We all hold hands, we're across many different industries, but we have one common desire. And that common desire is to create change. And today, in week one, we are going to talk about a skill set, which is hands down the #1 skill that you must not only adopt and learn, but you must learn how to master. You must become a master of communication. The difference between a high-performing and successful entrepreneur and someone who just struggles and often plateaus, the difference is the ability to communicate. There have been dozens, hundreds, thousands of people and terrible products that are unworthy of success, but they've been able to achieve success because the individual representing that product was a master of communication. Now, the beauty for all of you, this is what I know to be true, is that every one of you represent a product or a service that's world-class. Would you agree? Every one of you, whether you're a network marketing professional, a chiropractor, a health coach, a life coach, a business coach, whatever area you fall within, your product and service is world-class. It probably could even sell itself in many ways, right? Now, why are some performing at a very high level within your industry or within your company, and others are not, when they're selling the same product and the same service? And the answer is communication skills. And that's why we are starting right here, right now, with this topic. It's a topic that I'm extremely passionate about. It's a topic that I've trained literally thousands of times, from large-scale seminars to smaller in-person boot camps and even virtual boot camps just like this. My goal is that when we leave this discussion after about an hour today, that you have a new framework to use when it comes to communicating, when it comes to empowering people to take action, when it comes to selling, when it comes to having a conversation with your spouse and with your children. My goal is that you become a master of communication, and it's not going to happen because of this hour. I can promise you that. It's going to happen because of the hours that you invest in mastering the skills that I'm going to share with you. So here's what it comes down to. I'm going to introduce the new paradigm of communication. And I want to share a brief story to give some context to this, because this is something that I've discovered over 12 years, and it is the reason why that we exist as a company at Syndico. This is our secret sauce. We know how to communicate through the spoken word and through the written word. And we always use a specific framework in order to deliver the message. And I'm going to teach you that framework, but I'm going to first start by sharing this framework. And where was this even derived from? So years ago, probably about 13 or 14 years ago, I was doing door-to-door sales. I was 19 years old. I was in Manhattan, Brooklyn. This was actually the summer before my final semester in college. I didn't want to do kind of like the standard internship. I really wanted to really focus more on a meaningful experience, something that would allow me to grow in many ways, that would make me uncomfortable. So I was doing door-to-door sales in Manhattan and in Brooklyn, and I was selling credit card processing. So it wasn't a highlight of my life what I was selling, but the experience was world-class. If you've ever done door-to-door sales, I'm sure that you can relate in the sense that it is the most wonderful learning experience that you can ever have. And what was so interesting about this experience is that nearly everyone failed. It was very hard, 100% commission based. There was a ton of training, but the reality was not everybody was built to actually go door to door in Manhattan and Brooklyn during the hot summer months. And I will never forget the first day, the person that was training me said, "Jared, I want you to know your odds of success are so minimal." And that indifference just like blew my mind. I'm like, really? I'm going to prove myself to you. So I said, "Tell him whatever it takes, I'm willing to do to be successful." So what he told me is, you need to see 100 businesses every single day, door to door, 100 businesses in order to be successful. You have to play the law of averages. I'm sure that you hear this all the time from your business mentors or from leaders within your industry. You need to play the law of averages. So I said to myself, okay, I'm going to play the law of averages. I'm going to accelerate the law of averages. So I started to see anywhere from 150 to 175 businesses every day that first week. Monday comes, I'm in the trenches, I'm out in the field, I'm hustling, and I have a big donut at the end of the day when it comes to sales. Tuesday comes, I'm hustling, I'm like, I'm going to see an extra 10 doors today, big donut. Wednesday, big donut. Thursday, big donut. I felt demoralized. I thought I couldn't do it. This person that was training me is right. I don't have what it takes. I can't sell. And I'll never forget it. On that Friday, I said to myself, if I can't generate even interest, because up to this point, I had doors slammed in my face, people cursing at me, throwing me out of their business. If I can't just even generate interest, I'm done. Like, this is just not the right fit. I'm wasting my time. And I'll never forget it. I was walking around. It was, I think, around 5 o'clock, which is around the time we would head back to the office to share our numbers, and mine were donuts all week. And it started to pour. It was like a thunderstorm, midsummer, and actually I was in Brooklyn. So I ran inside this little cupcake shop, soaking wet, totally demoralized, had no sales during that day. And the owner of the store happened to be sitting there, and he said, "What's wrong?" And I just became myself. I was just real. And I was just sharing from the heart what I was trying to do. And he said, "Wow, to be honest, I don't take any credit cards. I've been thinking about it for months. Like, let's get started." And he did what I call a full boat. He got a credit card machine and processing. I made a $300 commission, and I felt like a hero. And I didn't really know what I did to accomplish that, other than I was myself. And I started to change the way that I was pursuing this opportunity. And instead of playing the law of averages, where I would see 100 to 150 businesses every day, I started focusing on building relationships and seeing 10 to 12, maybe 15 businesses a day. And guess what happened? that summer, this was like an internship, if you want to call it that, I became the #1 salesperson at the entire company. I was leading seminars around the company because when they were seeing 150 businesses a day and maybe getting a sale every other day, I was seeing 10 to 12 and getting 3 to 4 sales every day. But I didn't know exactly what I was doing other than the fact that I was being me. I was being super authentic. One of the biggest challenges that people face when it comes to communication is they try to follow scripts or they try to model someone that isn't who they are. So it comes across as inauthentic and broken and completely ineffective. So I became, in my mind, a master of communication, but I didn't necessarily know why. I didn't know where this was derived from. So I just kind of continued with life knowing that I could now sell. But this was when the new paradigm of communication was born. This is when this whole concept was established, even though I was unaware. I didn't know exactly what I was doing. I kind of just stumbled upon it. But as time went on, I started to dissect it. I started to realize things about the way to communicate with people to get my desired outcome. And since I'm always trying to help, that was the art of positive manipulation. And it would work, and their lives would change. But it all came together when I was working on Wall Street. For 6 months of my life, I decided to try corporate. I wanted to see, did I have what it takes to be told what to wear, when to come to work, how to brush my hair, et cetera, et cetera. And obviously, it didn't work for me. But what did work was I became clear on what I was doing. I became aware of my intention. And I'll never forget it. I was part of this group that was managing the net worth of people that had over $25 million of liquid capital to invest. And I kind of became like the hustler. I knew nothing about finance. I didn't know what a stock was, a bond. I didn't know how to invest. I just knew how to sell. And I sold myself into this company, and then they put me out into the world to try to get people interested to come into a meeting with my team. So I was going to every red carpet event in New York City. I was whining and dining with athletes and celebrities and big people in the fashion industry. It was pretty cool. I was 21 years old. It wasn't a bad gig. And I'll never forget every time that I would leave the corporate office, my team, which was much more senior, they were 20 to 30 to 40 years older than I was, they would always tell me, Jared, you need to master your elevator pitch. You need to master it. And I couldn't figure out, like, what about the elevator pitch? It just didn't work for me. Like, what do they mean by that? It didn't sit well, and I couldn't figure out what it was. And for anyone that doesn't know, an elevator pitch kind of goes like this. Imagine that you are in the top story of a building. Maybe it's a 30-story building. And your ideal prospect, your ideal candidate for your business shows up in the elevator. And you have 60 seconds between that top story and the lobby to communicate what you do with the hope and the desire that they're going to say, tell me more. Let me have your business card. That's the hope and the desire, right? And something about that just never sat well. And I remember thinking to myself as I was in this limo going to one of these red carpet events, why doesn't this work for me? Like, what about that elevator pitch concept doesn't work? And then it just hit me. And I realized in that moment that personally, I don't care about what anyone does. Like, it doesn't interest me. It's a label. It's completely meaningless. Like right now, we have people across 13 industries. We have chiropractors. We have health coaches. We have wellness advocates. We have perfectly posh consultants. We have distributors from various network marketing companies. And your what is the same with every other person in your industry. I mean, like, one chiropractor's what is another chiropractor's what? One wellness advocate, what is another wellness advocate what? One 4Life distributor's what is another 4Life distributor's what? Nothing about your what is interesting. Nothing about your what distinguishes you. Nothing about your what would motivate me to have a conversation with you. But what I also realized in this moment is that there is something that I'm very passionate about. Something that immediately engages me every single time. And it has nothing to do with what you do, but rather why you do it in the first place. What's your drive? What's your motivation? This is a group of very talented people that I'm blessed to work with every day called Our Tribe, 20,000 plus of you, actually. And it's so fascinating because I don't care about what company you're with. I don't care about what label you give yourself, but I will read any comment from any of you when you dig into your why. As in, why do you do what you do? What's your motivation? And when I had this distinction, I remember I stepped out of the limo and I just felt so empowered. And I walked into this red carpet event. I'll never forget, it was this big fashion event. There was models there and there was designers there. And I just started leading with my why. I said, why I exist and why I do what I do. And there was a room of like thousands of people at this event, but there was like 20 people surrounding me and listening, and they came in for meetings. They started to invest with my team, and that's when it hit. There's a really interesting concept when it comes to communication that gets ignored, and it gets ignored and stifled. And that's why, after reverse engineering this for years, I came up with this concept called the new paradigm of communication. And before I share this framework with you, I want to talk about this concept called the communication continuum, because there's two opposite ends of the spectrum with this continuum. And I'm going to touch on the first piece right now, one that many of you might actually use already in your business. But here's the key. If you're only using one side of the continuum, you might get the outcome you want every now and then, but it's not predictable. It's not replicatable. So there is a goal with all of this, and that's what I'm going to share in a moment. But on one side of the continuum, let's just say the left side of the continuum, is the emotional side. This is when you're having a conversation with someone, and as the receiver, they think to themselves, wow, this feels so right. It's an emotional dialogue. Let me give you an example. I know all of you are very familiar with attending conferences and conventions and seminars and things like that. So have you ever attended an event and you were in the actual convention hall, you were hearing the speakers, you were just on fire, emotional fire, so stimulated. You're with people that believe in what you believe. You're taking over the world, and you walk out of that room and you're greeted by vendors that are selling you everything, widgets and gadgets and gizmos, and you're just walking around, but you're on fire. You're like a magnet. You're just everything is just fantastic. You're so emotionally engaged. And you walk up to a vendor who has this gadget, and this vendor knows that you're super emotional right now. So he starts talking about how this gadget's going to change the world and change your life, and it's exactly what you need in your business. And he's going on, and everything that this vendor is saying, it just feels so right. You have no idea what he's talking about. Like, nothing about it makes sense, but it just feels so right. It's such an emotional connection that you take out your credit card, you drop it on the table, you spend $10,000 buying this gadget, and you're on fire. You have a gadget that's going to change your life and the world. And then you go home after that weekend, and your spouse is there who was not at the convention with you, so they're not as emotionally engaged. And you start talking about this gadget and how this gadget is going to transform the world and your business and your life. And you're going to buy houses and boats and cars, and you're going to retire in 5 years. And the spouse that you love so deeply, who was not at the event, says, all right, that sounds great, but like, what does it actually do? And you're like, it doesn't matter what it does. It just feels so right. So here's the deal, right? I know that was an extreme example, but I'm sure some of you are like cracking up right now because you've been down that path before. Anyone who sells or communicates on the emotional side of the continuum, the outcome is just unsustainable. Because what I always tell businesses that focus only on emotion is you better have a tight return policy. Because most people are going to buy out of emotion, and then they're going to return out of logic. Because once you're no longer with them as the communicator, they're not going to be as emotionally on fire. And then they're going to come down from that cloud that they're on, and they're going to ask for a return. This is why focusing only on the emotional side of the continuum, it's just unsustainable. Okay? The other end of the continuum is also unsustainable. This is the intellectual side. When you're having an intellectual conversation with someone, everything just makes sense. everything about what you say makes sense. It really does. But here's the problem with communicating intellectually, is there's no emotion. So now all of a sudden somebody makes an intellectual decision and they say yes to your product or your service, which is spectacular because everything you just said makes sense. But here's the problem. Google makes sense. So after they make your purchase and you think that you have a lifer, this is someone that's going to buy my product or service forever because it just made so much sense to them, they're going to eventually go on to Google and do some research while they're wasting time one day during lunch, and the outcome is going to be less than you desire because now what's going to happen? They're going to find another product or service that compares to yours that makes sense. And this once so very loyal customer or client of yours is now all of a sudden the customer or client of someone else who makes sense because all that you did was engage them on an intellectual level. It might work temporarily, but I'm not here for temporary change. I'm here to make a massive impact with you. I'm here for the change makers that all of us are, literally make sustained change. That's what it's about. So focusing only on emotion, you're going to have a strong return policy, and focusing only on intellectual, you're going to need to have a really big discussion with your team around retention because you're going to lose people like crazy. So what's your goal? What's the desired outcome? The desired outcome is that you want to have complete engagement. And the only way to have complete engagement is for this. You ready for it? You need to strive for the perfect hybrid. You need the perfect hybrid between an emotional discussion and also an intellectual conversation. And when you have that hybrid, that perfect hybrid, what happens is what I call engaging people on an emolectual level. We are combining both emotion and intellect. Someone's going to say, wow, this feels right and this makes sense. When you can accomplish that, that's when you can truly build a successful business. This is the key. If some of you feel like you're selling your product or service and a lot of people are coming back disappointed, it's because you're only selling emotion. It just feels right. If some of you feel that you're getting sales, but people aren't fully engaged, it's because all that you're doing is selling intellect. It makes sense. Your goal is to have it feel right and to make sense. And here's the coolest part of what I'm going to share with you. You can use this new communication paradigm in all situations. I don't care if you're in an environment where an elevator pitch would make sense, so you have like a minute to talk to somebody one by one, or if you're speaking it from an audience of 100. I don't care if you're hosting an event at your home or at your place of business, or if you've been invited to speak at a seminar in front of thousands. I don't care if you have 1 minute. I don't care if you have 1 hour. What I'm going to share with you is a communication framework that's elastic. It's a framework. You just now plug yourself into the framework. I'm not going to give you a script because scripts are broken. They just don't work. Scripts are an excuse for you not to be you. And the only thing that can sell what you offer the world is you. Because when somebody says yes, they're really saying yes to you as the person offering them the information. So, are you ready to dig into it? Are you ready to dig in to this framework? So I know I put up a lot of hype here, but I wanted you to recognize the importance of this. And also I wanted you to assess where you currently are. Are you focusing a little too much on the emotional side, or are you focusing a little bit too much on the intellectual side? Because the reality is you're probably choosing one or the other because it's most comfortable for you. For the analytical mind, you love making sense, right? You just love sharing and spewing facts and figures that just make sense. And for somebody that's not an analytical mind, like they're a more emotional being, you love selling people on the vision and the emotion and all of that kind of stuff, which is great, but just unsustainable. So what we need to do is create that hybrid, and the framework that I'm going to share with you right now is how you go about doing it. So when it comes to communication, whether you're hosting a presentation for 60 minutes or having a conversation with somebody at your local Whole Foods for 60 seconds, there's 5 questions that you need to answer. And you can spend time preparing. You can spend time actually like digging into these responses and actually practicing this. So when the opportunity arises, you're just on fire. I mean, it's just rote memory at that point because that's what it's going to evolve into. So here's the deal. The first question that you need to answer, it's a really important one. It's probably the most important question you could ever answer. It's your why. As in, why do you do what you do? This focuses on the emotional side of the communication paradigm. This is a conversation when you share your why. We're going to talk about this in a moment. When you share your why, someone's going to say to themselves, wow, that feels so good. I mean, that just feels so empowering. And your why is your story. It's why you even exist in this world. So many people just go through the motions in their business and they don't ever tap in to like their drive. What is that for you? Like you could have chosen any path with your life. You're super talented. You could have done anything you wanted, but you chose to be a change maker, you crazy fool. I mean, and I'm saying that because I chose that path too. I'm a crazy fool. It's craziness to think you can make change. But why? Like, what is it? And one of the things that I have seen as a result of going through this exercise with, I mean, thousands of people, from people that are thriving financially to people that are struggling immensely, to people that feel incredibly self-confident, to others that are wildly broken, and everyone in between. Consistently, the why is a story of something that happened in your childhood or something that happened in your past. There's some event that took place, and because of that event, it just sets you on fire. Now, here's the deal. Your why needs to be real. This can't be a Hallmark card. This can't be you sitting down with a thesaurus and trying to figure out the perfect adjectives and pronouns. I don't even understand that kind of stuff, grammar stuff. It can't be that way. It needs to be legitimate. It needs to be your story. Like for me, and I've shared this a few times, and I'll share this with you now, my why goes back to my parents going through a ridiculously bad divorce when I was 5, turning 6 years old. Such a critical time to have a normal family. I didn't have it. And if anybody were to ask me, what was one word you can use to describe your childhood? You know what I would tell them? It was loud. There was just nowhere to go for peace. It was chaos. We went from being financially okay to absolutely having nothing, to having to move at bad points of my life, to fighting and restraining orders. I mean, it was just mayhem. So my why is to create freedom. I felt very captive when I was a child. And that's my motivation. It's not about creating freedom just for me. It's about creating freedom for everyone that I can touch, for my family, for my team, for our tribe, for your tribe. That's my why. That's my motivation. That's real for me. That's not a Hallmark card. That's stuff that I can get emotional about, and every one of you have that. I don't care if you feel that your childhood was absolutely amazing, there was no struggle. There's some reason that you've chosen to be who you are in this world. And you need to find a way to communicate that. And that's not going to be easy because it's raw emotion. But you need to dig into this question. Why do you do what you do? This is your personal story. And this is where every single communication must begin. I don't care if you're speaking on Facebook Live. I don't care if you're speaking to a group of 50 people. I don't care if you're talking to someone online at the supermarket. Everything must start with your why. And remember, this is an emotional conversation. The receiver of this message, you know what they're going to say? Wow, this feels so right. It just feels right. It just feels so right. That's the first question you need to answer within this framework. Why do you do what you do? It's your personal story. Dig into it, spend time with it, and don't try to make it perfect. Make it perfectly imperfect because everyone's story is perfectly imperfect. It got you to where you are today, which is a blessing to you. The next piece of this communication framework is another question. And the question is how? This is an intellectual discussion. When you start going into your how, what happens is someone that's receiving this message, they're going to say, yeah, this makes sense. This makes so much sense. So first we're starting with the why, which is emotion. It feels right. Then we're going to transition to the how. This makes sense. This is an intellectual conversation. So the how is, how are you going to deliver on your why? How are you going to execute? Here's the challenge. When asked, what do? Most people respond with their how. And they miss that opportunity to engage someone emotionally initially and then introduce the intellect. You're just going in the wrong order. So the how is, how do you execute? So here's a great example. I would imagine that everybody that's participating in some way, shape, or form is in the business of transforming people's health and lifestyle, right? So let's just give an example here, okay? Let's pretend that your why, I'm just gonna kind of go through this process with you, and I'll tie it all together in the end. Let's say that your why is that when you grew up as a child, your parents wanted what was best for you. They really did, but you were a sick kid, and they didn't know what to do with you. They didn't know where to go. All of these holistic remedies, they just weren't accessible at the time. They were more unknown. So they started pumping you with tons of pharmaceutical medications, tons of drugs, just because they care. And it ended up leading to massive compromises for you in your life because you just struggled. And one prescription led to the next prescription, and it all led to this cascading effect, almost like this perfect storm for you that really wasn't perfect. And because of your upbringing, it set you on this mission to ensure that no child or adult will suffer once they meet you. So that's your why. Well, how are you going to deliver? Well, the way that you go about delivering, this is the intellectual part. Maybe you're a chiropractor, maybe you're a wellness advocate, maybe you're a for-life distributor. So you actually talk about your how. The way that we deliver is we have this fantastic line of products that represent all the different needs that you have when it comes to your health. It's almost like they're alternatives to things that you would typically use, and they're natural, and they're safe, and they're effective. And this is your how. So for Synduit, our how, as an example for all of you, is we've built a marketing solution that gives busy entrepreneurs their time back. We crowdsource various ideas so we can find out what's proven within your industry, and then we bring them to life, and we give them to you, and with one click of a button, you're able to replicate, automate, and personalize all of your online and offline marketing. But the why, my story, is this burning desire to create freedom. The how makes sense. The why feels right. So spend time on this. Why do you do what you do? We start with emotion. It's a feeling. We then transition to how. It's an intellectual conversation. How are you delivering on your why? The next piece of this framework is the what. What are the benefits that I stand to gain if I say yes? What are the benefits that I can possibly experience? This is an emotional conversation. When somebody hears benefits, they're going to say to themselves, oh my gosh, this just feels so right. Remember, we started with feeling, okay? Then we went to this makes sense with the how, and now we're back to feeling again. What are the benefits that I stand to gain? Now here, this is a really fun part for you, okay? Whether you're talking one-on-one or one-on-minute, whether you're talking for 1 minute or for 1 hour, the what are the benefits? This is not theory. All of you are in a position right now where you've changed at least one person's life, if not hundreds to thousands of lives. Would you agree? Yes, I know. Not right now, because I know that's the case. So the what are the benefits section is where you're going to share a story of transformation. But here's the key. You want to know who you're speaking with. So if you're speaking with a mother, then share a story of transformation of a mother who worked with you in some capacity and how their life transformed. If the person you're speaking with is a 20-year-old athlete, then share a real-life story of transformation of a 20-year-old athlete that you transformed because they worked with you so that it's relevant to that person. The what is such an emotional conversation because now what's going to happen is this person is engaged initially with your story, your drive. They're then intellectually stimulated with how you're going to deliver on your why, and now they're emotionally engaged again because they can see themselves within the context of this transformation, because you just shared a real life story. Now, if you're hosting a live event or a seminar or a workshop or even a webinar or something like that, when you get to this section of your presentation, I recommend having somebody else show a testimonial video that's relevant to everyone in the room. Have someone stand up in the room that experienced a transformation because of you. Let them share their story. What was their life like before? What is it like now? What do they want everyone to know? The what is so inspiring. It's the opportunity for the other person to hear you and say, damn, this person works with people just like me. This is an opportunity. It's perfect because they work with others just like me. The what is an emotional conversation. The goal is that the receiver of your communication, they say to themselves, wow, this feels so right. The fourth piece to this framework is the who. As in, who is the ideal person for you to do business with? Now, this is an intellectual conversation. Someone's going to hear this piece and they're going to say, yep, that just makes so much sense. Now, this is often an area that's very challenging for change makers because deep down inside, you want to serve everyone, right? Like you want to change everybody's life. But here's the deal. I promise you right now, I can refer somebody to you that doesn't represent your who, and you don't want to change their life because they're going to ruin your life in the process. So your who is not everyone, but your who is a very specific person. And the key in this section, and this is something, the thinking exercise, is you want to write the story of your who. Like, what do they do? What are their hobbies? What are their interests? What are their pain? What is their opportunity? What are their goals? What are their aspirations? The reason why we are so effective at Synduit is because we have an avatar that is so crystal clear, and every one of you that are participating right now, you fall into that avatar. There's something that makes every one of you consistent. You're all busy entrepreneurs that have this wild and burning desire to change the world, and many of you are petrified of technology and marketing. That's just fact, and if you're not petrified, you recognize the need for it, but you don't want to be the one to use it. And that's just the beginning of our who story. I mean, we have spent like years crafting this. So I'm asking you to spend the next 15 to 30 minutes when we're done and really going through this process and really digging in to who do you want to serve? What are the characteristics of this person? Now, here's the coolest part of having clarity of your who. Because once you get to this section of the communication, whether it's one-on-one or one-on-many, whether you're talking for 1 minute or for 1 hour, when you get to this section of your communication, the receiver or receivers of the message, so it's going to happen every time. If they are not your who, but you've done the other few steps the right way, they're going to try to become the who. They're going to be, no, I really want that, because you've engaged them emotionally, you've then stimulated them intellectually, you've then engaged them emotionally again, and right now you're stimulating them intellectually, and they want it. They want in. And if they are your who, guess what's going to happen? They're going to jump through hoops to get involved with what you have to offer. I know that sounds like ridiculously theory-based, but here's fact. Everyone wants to find a place where they belong. And if you're going to communicate who your ideal candidate is, and they meet those requirements, they want in. Because in their mind, whether they realize it consciously or subconsciously, there are going to be other people just like them that you're supporting, and they want to connect with them because everyone wants a place where they belong. The who is an intellectual discussion. I'm going to take you through all of this, where I'm actually going to go through each of the steps and how I would communicate Synduit to you, and I'll even create a scenario for someone in the health and wellness industry, because I know that most of you fall into that space, and how I would actually go about doing this. But you need to get precise with your who, or you have no idea who you're attracting. This is an intellectual conversation. The receiver of the message is going to say to themselves, wow, this just makes so much sense. It makes so much sense. The fifth and the final piece to this framework, this is very simple. You just need to plug yourself into it now. This is what I call closing the loop. You're actually going to end where you began. Remember, we started with the why, which is your story, your drive. Why do you do what you do? Or that's that emotional introduction. But now what we're going to do is we're going to end with the why. But here's the deal. This is not the same why. You're not going to just end with your story. This why is an emotional conversation. Someone's going to hear it. They're going to hear it and they're going to say to themselves, oh my gosh, this feels so right. But this why is different. This is the why of what's possible. This is the why of the vision. This is the why of where you're going. And if this person meets your who, they have the ability to go there with you. This is the why of your mission. This is the why of something out into the future that you have crystallized at this point, and that's where you're going. There's no plan B. This why is so powerful. This is the why that keeps you up at night. This is the why when things start going astray. This is that next level of why. Like you have your story and then there's like your vision. And those are the things that drive you. This is that why. This is the story of what's possible. And it's so critical, whether you're talking one-on-one or one-on-many, whether you're talking for 1 minute or for 1 hour, that you end where you began so that you can close this loop. And here's the key. When you go through this framework, what you've now done is you've built a relationship with this person. I didn't know I was doing this when I was selling credit card processing. I didn't realize it. I didn't dissect it this way. I didn't make it a framework. So I had a very difficult time training anyone to do this because I didn't know what I was doing. I just knew I was really effective with it. But this is what I was doing. I had this framework. I engaged people emotionally when I first started the discussion with my why, my story. I then went into how I'm going to deliver on that. And that was very specific to what I was doing. From there, I shared benefits. What were the benefits that this business would stand to gain if they said yes to my credit card processing? From there, I talked about the who, as in who the ideal business is for us to support. And I finally shared with the why, which is the vision of what's possible. And here's the deal. I was selling credit card processing. There's nothing inspiring about that. But there is an enormous amount of inspiration within what you do. And there's an enormous amount of intellectual stimulation within what you do. So it just gets even easier. But when you go through the framework, this is what's so cool. Because I know that so many change makers, their biggest fear is they don't want to sell. They don't want to come across as salesy for whatever reason, because sales is such a gift to the world. That's just not how you want to be perceived. But when you go through this framework, it's just so natural because you get to this beautiful point. And there's this beautiful point where you can ask for what you want, because what you want is what's best for the receiver or the receivers of the message. I want to say this again, because anyone that has this weird relationship with sales, it's because you've attached a story to what sales is based on either your own personal experience being sold, and that's usually not even the case, or your interpretation of what sales are, not what sales actually are. So here's what sales actually are when you're a change maker and you go through this framework. It's very natural. You can ask for what you want, which is for this person to do business with you, because what you want is what's best for the receiver or the receivers of the message. And I know that for a fact. You're a chiropractor, let's just pretend. What you want is for that person to become a patient. That's great. But guess what? That's what's best for them as well. Because once they become a patient, their health is going to transform. Or if you're a health coach, or a wellness advocate, or a wellness coach, or a perfectly polished consultant, or a distributor with 4Life, or any of the other companies we support, what you want is for someone to become a customer of yours, or for them to actually join your business to build a business. That's what you want. And that's also what's best for them. Because if they become a customer, they're going to gain access to products that are going to change their life. And if they become a business builder, they're on the path to pursue entrepreneurship, which is an opportunity to give them freedom, both time and financial. So that's the key here. You're in an industry where you're changing lives. So when you ask for what you want, the realization is that what you want is what's best for the receiver of the message. So now let's practice. Let's go through this together. And I'm not doing this because part of me is hesitant to always practice this because I don't want anyone to try to like script it out or try to like do this the Jared way, because you're not me and I'm not you. So like I couldn't do this for you authentically, and you definitely can't do this for me authentically. But I want to show you how to smooth this communication really is. Because it's not like shopping where you're like, okay, I'm going to answer why, and then I'm going to answer how, and I'm going to answer what, and then who. Like, you're not going to do it that way. It's going to be really smooth. And you can use this one-on-one or one-on-many. You can use this in 1 minute. I literally have seen people that I trained on this and myself all the time where I do this in 1 minute. Like, it's 1 minute, like pitch, if you want to call it that. And I touch on all these areas, and they're just like, okay, let's go, game on. Or you can do this in front of rooms where you have over an hour to speak with them. So it's completely elastic. You can use it with your spouse. You can use it with your children. You can use it with your friends. It's just a way to communicate that makes it very simple for someone to understand. And it also motivates them to take action. So here's the framework. I want to make sure that you have this nailed down right now. I'm going to repeat these words, even though it sounds repetitive, and then I'm actually going to go and I'm going to do this. You ready for this? We start with why. That's the emotional discussion. Someone's going to say to themselves, wow, this just feels so right. We're then going to transition to how. How is intellectual. This just makes so much sense. We're then going to talk about what, as in what are the benefits. This just feels so right. It's an emotional conversation. We're then going to go into the who, as in who's the ideal. This is an intellectual conversation. This just makes so much sense. And then we're going to close with the why, the vision of what's possible. And what that is an emotional discussion. This just feels so right. So I'm going to now do this from the standpoint of Synduit so that you can hear a very, very authentic way to deliver this. And then I'm going to do it from the standpoint of someone in the health and wellness industry. But here, I need your commitment here. Do not model me. Like, do not. Like, you can't be me. I can't be you. Model you. Like, be you. Be you within this framework. This is why it's so effective. Because it's not a script. Like, I could have not done this training, sent everybody a script, and you could have went and read it, and it would have failed. But instead, it's a framework. Just plug you into these 5 sections, and what's going to happen is you will engage people on an emolectual level, where we combine emotion and intellect. So this is how I would share Synduit. So I would start, obviously, with the why, and I'm going to go through the process right now. So my motivation, the reason why I do what I do, is because I went through my parents' divorce when I was 5 years old. And it was extremely difficult. Chaos, restraining orders, having money, not having money, moving. And if anyone could ask me to define my childhood in one word, I would have said it was loud. And it just became my ultimate motivation in life. The reason that I exist is to create freedom for myself, for my family, for my team, and for everyone that I have the ability to touch. The way I go about doing that is I'm the founder of a software company called Synduit. We've built a really interesting and unique marketing solution that allows you to automate and replicate proven marketing ideas. We work within specific industries. We find out what are the proven concepts that are also compliant within that industry. We build them, so we do all the graphic design and the copywriting, and then we install it inside of our software so that the entire industry can access it. And with one click of a button, they can replicate, automate, and personalize it. The benefits that we see, they're just extraordinary. I mean, we have entrepreneurs who struggled in their business because they weren't sure how to tie it all together, reaching new levels of success. We have this fantastic story of this one woman who was consistently at a certain volume within her business for 5 years. And 1 month, actually November of 2016, she broke out. She grew by 40%, and she stayed at that level. And when asking her what was the difference, she said, Synduit. I have a team of people underneath me, and they've never been more engaged in growing because Synduit is just making it so easy. And the perfect person to work with us is the busy entrepreneur who's mission-driven. They have to have a mission bigger than themselves. They have to want to serve. They also are probably either afraid of technology and hate marketing, or they understand the need for technology. They just don't want to spend a ton of time using it. But our ultimate mission is this. We exist to unite 1 million changemaker entrepreneurs so that together we can help create freedom for 1 billion people around the world. So what I want to ask you to do is become part of our tribe. People just like you are benefiting every single day, and I know that you're one click away from having that exact same experience. So I just did that in like a minute and a half, right? That could work anywhere. I can do that in a supermarket. I can do that at a networking event. I can do that if I had an hour to present to you. I would break it down in the same structure. For any of you that have ever been on a sales webinar that I've led where I was selling into it, I start with the why. I then go into the how, which is usually the longest sections. That's where I give a demo of our software. I then share success stories. I talk about the successes that people have achieved. I then share our avatar. This is what we look for in the ideal candidate. I share our vision, and then I go into the close because I know what I want is what's best for you. So now if you were in the health and wellness industry, this might be the way that you do this. But please remember, plug you into the framework. So you start with your why. So my childhood was rather tumultuous, to be honest with you. I was constantly sick and no one knew what was wrong. And I have the most wonderful and loving parents in the world. And all that they wanted to do was find a solution for me because I was suffering. So they would just pound me with all these different medications. And it was from one doctor to the next doctor, to one medication to the next medication, to side effects. And it was almost like my life was like a perfect storm of drugs and testing, and it just set me on this mission. And it's this mission to ensure that no one else has to live that way. No one else has to experience the pain of not knowing how to create health in their life. And the way that I go about helping people is that I'm a health coach. So I have the blessing of being able to coach people from around the world and find out where their biggest challenges are when it comes to their health, and then together, we put together a program, and I'm the support system, and I also create accountability for them. And the benefits are the most rewarding part of what I do. I mean, the benefits are extraordinary. We have people that are losing weight, that have tried everything before, nothing worked. And with coaching, the right program, the accountability, and the support, they have breakthroughs, but not just breakthroughs, sustainable transformations. And here's what I have found is that the perfect person for me to support is someone who is willing to commit and let go of their story of why they've been unsuccessful. I get it. There's tons of gimmicks out there. There's tons of products that promise the world. I totally understand it. Remember my story. I was in the medical world. I understand the challenges that these people face, but that's our ideal person. The ideal person for me to support is someone who really wants to change, and they're willing to let their story of their past be the story of their past. But my ultimate vision is this. My ultimate vision is to create a community of people, 1,000 of them, who experience sustainable health transformation, and then for us to unite. Maybe every other month we come together for all-in webinars. Maybe once a year we travel together. I want to create a community of like-minded people who are motivated to create health for themselves and to share with others as well. So I want to invite you. I want to invite you to work with me because I just know deep down inside, I can guide you down that path to get you to where you want to be. So that's how I would do it if I was in the health and wellness industry. None of that's my story. It's completely inauthentic, but just giving you an idea of how naturally this flows. And if you're doing a presentation, let's say you have a 60-minute presentation that you're going to give on X, Y, and Z, your product, your opportunity, your service, whatever that might be, start with your story. That's your why. Spend 5 minutes there, 7 minutes there, however long it needs to be. Then go to the how. The how is the meat of the presentation. If you were going to lead a seminar on how to get healthy by becoming paleo, just like a basic example, your why is your story. The how is how you actually go paleo. The what are stories of transformation of people that have gone paleo. The who is the perfect candidate of someone who should go paleo. And the why is your vision of what's possible. So in that presentation, the how is the bulk of it. And the why, the what, the who, and the why just fit around it with the goal of creating an intellectual engagement for every person that's participating. So now it's your turn. It's your turn to go through this process, because here's what I know to be true. This works. I have shared this framework with thousands. I've trained people on this more than anything else I've ever done. Thousands of people, from virtual audiences to live audiences. I've done this one-on-one with people. I have trained thousands of people on this framework, and every one of them who follows through notices the difference. And the final piece to all of this that I want you to embrace is that if you do this right, and I'm going to encourage you to, I'm actually going to challenge you to in a moment, if you do this right, you must expect the outcome that you desire. You must. Like, think about this concept. Michael Jordan, probably the best athlete of all time across any sport. Whether you love him or hate him, you can't challenge that, right? Chicago Bulls, multiple championships, best basketball player of all time, possibly best athlete of all time. Do you ever think when he was in a championship game and he hit the winning shot that he ran to the locker room, he went to his teammate Scottie Pippen and said, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe it went in"? Obviously he didn't do that. Every time he stepped on that court, he expected the outcome. And that outcome was one outcome. We're going to win. That's it. That's who you have to be when you're using this communication framework. You have to expect the outcome that you desire, because you're a change maker. That's a big deal. I'm not calling you that to make you feel good about yourself. I'm calling you that because that's what you are. And when you use this framework as a skill set to communicate through, expect that if that person on the other end of the table, in the restaurant, in the seminar room, that other person, if they're your who, expect that they're going to say yes. So here's the challenge for you right now, because this is not just going to be a feel-good experience. This is a boot camp, not for the faint of heart, and you've committed to it. And now it's time to follow through. Your challenge this week, before we meet next week at the same time, is to engage at least one person each day on an intellectual level. And then after you do that, go into our Facebook group that you're in and post in the group how it felt and the outcome. Be as descriptive as possible, because it's going to inspire others who might be a little bit afraid to do it anyway. Once again, the challenge this week is engage at least one person each day on an intellectual level, and then post in the Facebook group how it felt and the outcome. This concludes week 1 of our 7-week boot camp for change makers, where I'm going to teach you the fundamentals of marketing for busy entrepreneurs. Next week is a really important subject. It's one that many change makers struggle with, because you're just so passion oriented. You just want to change the world. You're going to throw up as much things as possible. Whatever sticks, sticks. But here's the deal. Real change makers are very calculated. Real change makers, they actually build what I call a magnetic marketing plan. And next week, it's very tactical. There's no headspace stuff in this. It is pure tactics. I'm going to teach you how to build a magnetic marketing plan. I love all of you. I appreciate you. And now it's time to take action. Go out there and engage people on an intellectual level. Share what transpires in our Facebook group. And remember, together we achieve more. I'll speak with you next week.